So here in the Center for Brain and Mind in India, which is also attempting to take up longitudinal studies, it's basically to bring people together and try to understand brain disorders better. So in your view, if there was an India database coming into the global forum, how do you think it would add value to the schizophrenia or other brain disorders?
Well, it's very important. We heard today that I didn't, and I suspected it, but I didn't know that India is actually very close to Europe in terms of genetic diversity, because there's kind of like two main reasons. One is it's good to include genetic diversity in these kind of studies, because that actually increases the resolution at which you can say things. It's called something called linkage disequilibrium. But because the genome is not inherited base by base, it's inherited in big chunks. And across populations like Europe and India, we've inherited the same chunks. So inside a chunk, it's very hard to know what does what. But if you have genetic diversity, then actually it turns out like someone in Africa might have a different chunk, and now you suddenly work with a smaller. So that's one reason. But there's also other reasons, I think, and that is the culture of at the heart of the problem, or heart of psychiatry, lies diagnosis. And I think it's very important to try to start working together to see how does these diagnoses transcend culture. So I think that's why I think it's, even if we are genetically very similar in the sense that you're not adding more resolution, we still add that kind of dimension and how these diseases affect society and the individuals living in society. That, and then the numbers. I mean, India is vast, great population. So I really, and in my field of functional genomics, the numbers are that's what's very much lacking. So in genetics, they have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, and the same with imaging, and what we are doing in neuroscience is we're still in the 40 or 50 range. So that has to grow to several thousands too. And then I think this is where I think India can have a very prominent role, and that's one of the reasons I'm here working with Biju. Right.
So with bigger numbers and bigger imaging size, it has possibly also reached a stage where it is the current computing capacities are not enough, and there may be advent of AI already happening, and newer technologies coming in.
Yeah.
So what is your opinion on that?
Yeah, I wish for more storage space and more computing. It's ridiculously expensive. It's really a limiting thing. On the other hand, it's something that you can centralize. So we work on the Swedish national cluster. So some of my friends in their labs have their own clusters in each lab. We work on the national cluster, and I think that this is something that I want Sweden to build it more. I would implore India to do the same thing. And one of the reasons is I think it's also a great democratic tool, because the kind of science that I do is very expensive in terms of chemistry. But once the data is there, we make it available to anyone. And so I think that there's so much more to be done in terms of understanding the data. And so with a decent central investment in this, you could empower PhD students and postdocs, no matter where you sit in the world, to carry out really important science with like they don't need much facilities more than a laptop themselves. So I think that's a huge opportunity right now, because
Yeah, and given that it's very expensive, it cannot be single-handedly funded, be it government or private. So it has to be a collaboration, not just between countries, but between multiple stakeholders. In the sense.
Yes, I think so. I mean, with two different things. The chemistries are very expensive. There we are right now, government funded. Of course, I would very much welcome private investments in this. I do think that this is a huge, it's a big societal problem. And were we to find a drug, there's actually, despite the fact that the big pharma dropped out, there is a huge commercial potential as well. But that's on the chemistry side. On the computation side, I think yes, it's expensive, but it's more like an investment. Once you've made the investment, it will keep paying off for a long time. So this is, I think, and once you've made it's very easy to do. Like, you don't have to train people the same way. Like, you make this computing capability accessible to people, and you could have. In Sweden, we have it's like a grant proposal. You say, here's my project, can I please have some space? And then they determine how much space you need, and this is really nice. And I think this is it's easy to build. Technology is there. It's kind of easy to manage in the sense. So I think that's a very big opportunity for country like India, where like maybe places like here, Nimhansen and CBS, no problem, you guys can make the experiments yourself, but a lot of universities don't have those type of resources, right? And they can still contribute a lot.
So, in your view, what would be an ideal or a governmental framework which can handle the disease burden caused by mental illness? As you said, it's a huge societal problem, but it is not getting the recognition or importance.
Okay, so first, I'm not a clinician, so I can't say anything about clinical guidelines. I think that funding is lacking. I think that we are in a very exciting times. Every generation of scientists has a few mad people that go after psychiatry, and it's always, you're always armed with the latest thing. Right now it's maybe transcriptomics, genetics, and imaging and what have you, but I do think it's a massive cost to society. So addressing it is really necessary. We can't just not do it, and. So I think that I think it's a good time to invest in the research, and the reason. So the U.S. just had their brain initiative. Europe is investing in neuroscience, maybe a little bit more traditional neuroscience. But there's been an amazing development of techniques, and I think that. Maybe now it's time to, but that's been very largely not disease-driven, right? But now it's time to apply all this to try to understand disorders, and that's the space where I operate, and I think they should give us much more money. No, but I do think, I'm making a joke, but it's true that I think that psychiatry research is kind of underfunded in comparison to a lot of other areas, and it's actually much less funded compared to the cost to society than many other disorders.
Yes. So maybe through people like you and other neuroscientists, if the governments can wake up and realize this is a real problem to the society, and economically and otherwise, hopefully there'll be improved funding.
Yes.
If not
yes.
a lot more.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's tough. I mean, we have a hard time competing, because cancer have had huge success. They can show something for the money, right? Like massive investment into cancer research, but cancer is largely not a lethal disorder anymore. Psychiatry, we've gotten our fair share of money, and we have nothing to show for it. So I think that maybe we need to, I hope we don't have to wait until there's a drug, because that's going to take a long time. And it's such an important issue that we should keep funding it, even though it's a hard issue.
So I'll just rewind a few minutes when you mentioned that the young Jens overslept and went into the field of neurology. So coming to present, and if I were to place you again as the young Jens, what would your message be to the researchers out there, and what pertinent areas are there then in the field of neurosciences that they should be really looking at, and what should inspire them to come to this field?
Innate curiosity should inspire you. And I don't think you should listen to what old people have to say about what's important. I think that you need to, I'm not that old. I think you should be a scientist if you're curious. And you should study the thing. I think that a major problem is when you try to operationalize or that we're like science exists for science's own sake. It is not there to perform a function in society. It will lead to, it's been shown over and over again that it leads to amazing progress. But the most progress comes from when you don't interfere. So I think science has to be curiosity driven. And I think if you're a young scientist, you should really go for the things that interests you, because it's a very hard, life is hard, but it's not an easy choice of career. It comes with sacrifice, and I think you should only be in science if you are prepared to make that sacrifice, and from a deep personal perspective. I see a lot of people not being very happy about being scientists because maybe you had some other reasons for going into it, and I think that it's a deeply human thing to do, to be curious and to go and put your entire being into solving something. And I think that if that is your drive, then you should go into science and you should follow your gut. You should do the things that interest you the most, because then you will be ultimately the most useful to society.
Yeah. But are there enough number of neuroscientists out there in comparison to the disease that is existing? And do you think there should be more people coming in?
Well, we just need one really, really smart. Next Einstein out there, please come join us. No, I think that it's a hard question to answer. I think that we don't need only neuroscientists. It's a long chain so society needs to build a chain that goes from scientific discovery, from maybe patient care and building of these cohorts into basic science discoveries or clinically relevant discoveries. But then you need a whole cohort of people that can take this scientific discovery and bring it into, what's the possible alternative into treatment. And then once you have that, you need people to develop that and make that sure it's safe. And then you need to commercialize it. So there's a whole, like neuroscience is a small sliver of this. It's a really long pipeline, and different people of different expertise and drive and what interests you to do as everyone is equally important in this pipeline, and I think you should think about where in this pipeline we also need communicators, and I think that this is we produce much more PhDs than we do scientists, right? Like we can't pay for, not everyone can be a PI or a professor. And that's sometimes described as a problem. And I don't agree with this as a problem. I think we need people that are highly trained in those other positions. So it's not a failure when someone who does a PhD does not become an assistant professor. I think that that's how it should be, because doing a PhD is learning a way to think, how to tackle problems, how to find your inner drive, and be someone who is independent in their thinking. But we need those people in every position, right? I don't think you don't necessarily need just more neuroscientists.
Yes. So each of them has to contribute in the chain of things to
Yes,
address. It's a societal problem.
I think it is, and society should ensure that we have the entire pipeline filled. And I think that one place where I think the world has to catch up with, at least Western USA, is the commercialization of things. So much money comes in when you are able to commercialize findings, and then that leads more research also, and more patient care. And I think that's something where I think we should. I'm glad that Karolinska is taking those steps now and actually doing that. Yeah.
And before we close, I'd like to ask you, how was your experience at Manotsava? Because 2 days they were public-facing event where you saw a whole lot of people coming together, and then there was a more focused academic meeting of people. How was your experience at the event?
Well, I think that the whole thing has been fantastic. Heartwarming. The first 2 days, I only saw the final day of Manotsava, the public event. But it was amazing to see so many people engaging, and I think there was a lot of hope in the air. Great science, but also made it accessible, and I really like the focus on not just the science, but actually the societal involvement. I think that was really well done. I actually, I'm part of some effort that Karolinska is called Strategic Research Area Neuroscience. But anyways, we also have these outreach events, a much smaller scale. But I must say I was very impressed and inspired by the event that was in the hotel. That was really amazing. Here, the last 2 days, also great. You are very good hosts. I think that what has struck me is the breadth or the width of the science that's being done. Yeah, breadth, both in terms of like techniques, and it's clear to me that India is very heterogeneous in terms of extreme wealth and also extreme poverty, and the same goes for science in the sense. I can see that there are some labs that have enormous, very state-of-the-art technologies, while some are working on much lower budget. And what is touching is that I feel like that there is, at least here in this conference, there was kind of a sense of a community that we're trying to do something together, whether you're contributing with, I don't know, meeting people out in the field, to having a super expensive microscope and doing something. But there's a common kind of trust towards doing something. And I think this has been, this is actually a really nice trip. I'm gonna bring home a lot of cherished memories. And
That's wonderful to hear. And also on the scientific level, I hope your institute and the Center for Brain and Mind will find some platform to
Yes, me too.
collaborate and see our researchers join hands for a common cause.
Yes.
So on that note, I'd like to close this event.
Thank you.
Close this, and thank you, Professor, for your time. It was really interesting talking to you, and wish to have you more in Bangalore and at NCBS.
I'm sure.
Thank
you so much.
Thank you. And with that, I'm Anjali Marar, Science Communicator, signing off for the event. Thank you.